Hi, everyone. I'm Tom. I'm the GP at Dragonfly. We're a crypto venture fund. We're early investors in Flash models. And today I'm going to be talking about order flow, living in an MEV dystopia. Specifically, I think like the overview for this talk is, I think there's been a lot of great presentations so far, and there will be great presentations later about order flow design, order flow auction design, how to build auctions that have certain attributes and components that we like. I think this is obviously great research, but part of the problem, I think, is actually getting to a state where these auctions can actually be put in place in the first place. So a lot of the designs that we've talked about so far, frankly, MEV-related designs, sort of operate in this kind of like environment and world that we live in right now, where, hey, there's going to be all these transactions hitting this public mempool, and everyone's going to want to auction off their order flow, and how do we sort of design a great system around that? My point, and sort of this point from this block native tweet, is actually private order flow and private mempools are like kind of becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So like, what's the point of a good auction design if you don't actually have good inventory and good bidders? What if we're wrong? What if there isn't actually sort of this nice public order flow that people might want to auction off? How do we actually make sure that we can have sort of the world that we want in a way that doesn't sort of rely on finger wagging, but actually just incentivizes people to kind of do the right thing? And this is also supposed to be more taxonomical, so sort of walking through examples of where order flow is going today. I think there's been a lot of great writing so far about theoretically how would you privatize order flow, or like theoretically what kind of service might exist. So like Stefan and Quintus, also a lot of great people wrote really great, done really good research for talking about this in a theoretical concept. But obviously, as a VC, I see a lot of different projects and a lot of different things that people are working on, and so my argument is that it's already happening, and so it's not really good to think about, in an abstract way, what would a block builder look like, or things should sort of work this way. It's more how do things actually work, and how do we get people to kind of build things that we think are sort of have a desirable end state. You might also be familiar with this MEV supply chain sort of abstract that is sort of getting passed around in different circles. I think obviously this is great, showing sort of order flow, transaction flow, going from user to wallet to searcher to builder to validator. But I would argue this is almost sort of too simplistic. I think there's actually there's a lot of meat going on in here, and I think it's probably worth sort of digging into what actually happens between user and the wallet, because you get more and more leverage and more power as you sort of go further up the supply chain. So sort of high-level overview, abstract sense of what happens in that transaction lifecycle, adapt UI somewhere abstractly, sends a request for a signature for a transaction to a Web3 provider. The wallet requests a user to sign it. You get one of these little nice pop-ups, and then user signs the transaction. The wallet, in theory, should send the signed transaction to an RPC endpoint. Enters a public mempool, enters a maybe boost relay, whatever. We sort of all know this bit, and then it gets confirmed, and then that UI updates. So I think for each of these, you can sort of see how each of these different camps, they would sort of have the conception of, hey, we actually have the relationship with the end user, or we actually have the order flow, right? So does the RPC endpoint actually have the order flow? That's how some people sort of think about it. Does the user, does the wallet, does the dApp? And I think each of these cases, each of these camps has actually a really good argument as to why they actually have a lot of leverage and why they actually have sort of proprietary access to order flow. And then we're going to just get a bunch of nice little memes out of the way. I got a fucking, one of these. It's not funny. This one, this was like, you got that one. You got, this one. And, understandably mad, I think, in this scenario. I think, okay, let's put ourselves in the headspace of people who think of order flow belonging to RPC providers, right? Because conceptually, it's like transaction signed, you get sent to some RPC, and then they are sort of the ones that sort of determine where it gets routed. And truly, sort of also makes it's easy to explain. And I think this is historically how people have sort of thought about it. But in practice, obviously, there's a lot of hurdles to actually getting there, right? Who actually chooses the RPC provider? Can you even choose an RPC provider? Historically, up until very recently, you couldn't actually select your Ethereum mainnet provider or RPC provider in MetaMask. You could only do it for new networks. So you kind of had to go with Infura until I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. And even if someone does want to add a new network, the process of doing that is actually kind of a pain in the ass and kind of scary. This is actually from the Flashbots website on how to use Flashbots Protect. It's 4 steps, and you're copy pasting a bunch of scary looking stuff. It's actually really hard to get people to have agency over which RPC provider they're using and where their transactions are actually going. So the question is even if you were able to say, hey, I want to get access to proprietary order flow via being an RPC provider, like how do you actually get people to, give you their order flow, given all these sort of hurdles and that they might not even be able to understand how to. And so the go-to-market, I think, tends to sort of go into a few different buckets. So one is sort of appealing to user security. So like, hey, send me your order flow. I'm going to make sure you're secure. This is stuff like Harpy, again, disclosure, Dragonfly Portco, but I think they do some really cool stuff. So you replace your RPC provider with Harpy's RPC. They intercept and scan every single transaction that you send them. If it looks potentially malicious, there's like sort of a two-path process. So they send you an email, you have to approve it, and then it actually gets sent into the public mempool. And so you can see how, oh, this isn't just like faster, or this isn't just like less censorship resistant. It actually like provides this very tangible user benefit to people, which sort of incentivizes them to sort of switch over. I would say, simulation tools are also sort of going down this path. So like a Blowfish or like a Stello or Alchemy, also trying to think of, hey, what is like a real tangible user benefit that I can offer someone for giving me the order flow? Another sort of approach of go-to-market is sort of this like ease of use idea. So this is stuff like GasHawk, I would say Flashbox Protect, 1-inch rabbit hole, 0x transaction API, which just came out. It's basically adding a lot of nice, just pure UX benefits to sending them your transaction. Like with GasHawk, they will basically hold on to your transaction until gas prices come down based on some modeling that they do. So you can like pay less than you would if you just send it off into the mempool immediately. They can use nano transactions, so you can pay with a different fee. You can make sure you're not paying for any failed transactions. It's just like really nice sort of UX upgrades. In concept, these all should be like no-brainers to adopt, right? Like, why would you send your transactions to Infura today when you could send them to any of these nice services and they sort of give you all these nice benefits on top of it? But in practice, obviously, it's like not really happening there. And I think that's in part because the idea of like RPC provider is like a very abstract and kind of difficult to grok, and many wallets don't even really expose this idea. And so instead, what you see a lot of RPC providers do is like sell directly to wallets. So it's kind of like Manifold and Propeller Heads, where the idea is basically, hey, you're a wallet, you're trying to make money, you're venture backed, and your VCs are telling you to make money. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, you could like add a MetaMask swap type feature, but maybe you're not big enough, or you don't have the right kind of user base to monetize that. Could you actually go about basically using these products as like MEV extraction as a service? And so they get proprietary access to your order flow as a wallet. They extract MEV from all the flow the other users are generating, and that's how you actually make money. And again, this isn't even like this isn't even a concept. Like these kinds of things today, I would say the other sort of fork in this path is stuff of hey, give me your order flow, and I'll actually give you a kickback directly as a user. Nectar is working on this kind of concept, but the idea is basically instead of giving you some sort of UX win, I will actually like extract as much MEV as I can from your order flow, and then either give it back to the wallet or give it back to the user. So this is kind of why people think, oh, if I'm an RPC provider, I can get all this proprietary order flow, and that's going to be kind of like my moat, or kind of how this market's going to shake down. But in practice, if you sort of go, one level up the stack and one level up the funnel, wallets actually have like way more leverage here, right? Because again, as you sort of discussed, they can prevent you from switching your RPC, or like they can sort of have a really powerful default, or they can sort of abstract out or hide all this sort of stuff. So wallets, they need to monetize. Not everyone can have a MetaMask swap type product. They also tend to have really premium order flow. We sort of think about order flow again in a very abstract sense, but like order flow from retail users who are like not price sensitive, not time sensitive, is way more valuable than like order flow from like a arbitrage bot or something, or like a very sophisticated trader who's going to give you a lot of toxic flow. And so wallets actually have like this nice sort of juicy premium, again, sort of Robinhood-like in that way. Again, also many wallets do not allow users to switch RPC, or they obfuscate out the RPC provider. This is actually from MetaMask. So for MetaMask swaps, they have this demo feature of like what they call smart transactions. Basically, they do a lot of the things that the RPC providers that I just sort of went over do for you, instead of just sending your direct transaction directly into the mempool. So minimize costs, minimize front running. They prevent you from paying for failed transactions, things like that. So again, it's like even removing sort of the possibility for choice. For these Weave wallets, obviously they can do it themselves. This is a nice little Bert and Miller tweet over here. So Rainbow, obviously, for a while, they switched into doing swaps more recently. It was like back running user trades, and that was sort of a nice monetization path for them. Or they can just offload it to a partner like Manifold. Or in theory, again, sort of the mental model operating is like, oh, they should just auction off the flow. The question is like, how do you actually incentivize them to do that when in reality, like they might be making more money doing these other things? So it might actually be more profitable just to like have a swap feature rather than trying to sort of make money by auctioning off flow or extracting MEV from flow yourself. It is also kind of presupposes that like wallets are responsible for receiving and sending a transaction, which is not always the case. As an example by like sort of intent-based transactions or like app-specific transactions. So that's sort of the last bit here, which is like in reality, if you sort of go all the way up the funnel, it's sort of the interface and something like dApp UI that actually kicks off the transaction that I would argue has like kind of the most leverage. And we already are starting to see this as well. So right now, if you think about, okay, the dApp sends this transaction request, and then they're sort of out of the loop until the transaction actually gets confirmed. But in reality, they don't need to like have the wallet sign and broadcast the transaction. They can just hold on to the transaction themselves, or they can sort of have like an app-specific transaction and send it themselves to their own relay. So this is exactly what Sushi does. They have a partnership with Manifold, and when you go to Sushi, you can use this Sushi Guard feature. You basically sign this like PEX, this is sort of off-chain order, and then it goes into like their proprietary RPC provider, and then there's sort of their own little private pool. So it's like even if you were a wallet here, you wouldn't even have any leverage because you're not actually signing a transaction. You're signing this like sort of app-specific order, app-specific transaction. So it's like everyone's sort of going up and up, further up the stack and trying to like preempt the person in front of them. Obviously, this one's also somewhat confusing and dangerous because like you're just having someone sign this hex string and like it's kind of spooky. So maybe not the best outcome. Also, again, this sort of really heavily depends on like you as an application and your UI. A lot of applications, a lot of the flow is coming from aggregators, it's coming from third-party UIs, it's coming from bots. But for other applications, such as Uniswap, a lot of the flow is actually coming from their own UI. So they have a lot of leverage when it comes to transaction generation and whatnot. So this is like looking at the percentage toxic flow. You can look at sort of the user base and where flows are breaking down for these different applications, but it's not sort of one-to-one. So you can't sort of apply this ad hoc to your specific app. And then there's sort of this question sort of going back to the other RPC providers is like, how do you then incentivize people to use your own proprietary UI versus like coming in through a third party? Maybe this sort of goes back to this idea of like kickbacks and rev share, but instead of going back to the app, they're actually going back to users. So, and then, I swear I actually made these before the Uniswap thing, but maybe the answer is actually just do more vertical integration and make your own wallet if you're a dApp. And then we don't have to worry about any of this sort of like, these adversaries potentially intercepting your flow. So I think, the purpose of this was basically to say, everyone is sort of acting very rationally, right? Everyone is thinking about how do I make money and also provide a really good user experience. I think even in like, sort of Shireen's talk about like, Google and I would say digital ad auctions overall, it's like we didn't get into this end state by someone being like malicious or evil. It was literally just like, how do I provide a really great experience? And inherently, a lot of it comes from sort of vertical integration, and that vertical integration creates sort of centralization. And so the question is, how do we not get mad at MetaMask for having their own private RPC? How do we not get mad at an RPC provider for having this sort of private order flow process? It's like, how do we actually achieve their own objectives, which is like to make money, but also in a way that like has a sort of open private ecosystem that we actually want to create. So I think it's you can call these comments and you can be kind of mad at them, but I don't think that's really like kind of the best outcome. The question is like, how do you actually get them to intentionally and by their own volition open up their order flow? So how do we make it plus EV? It's basically a question of like, how do you make it more profitable for them to auction off their float versus like extracting it themselves, and what that sort of delta is. I think the other question that's sort of yet to be seen is like how users play into this. Right now, there are very few products that are actually offering kickbacks to users. A lot of the sort of perceived benefit from using one of these things is like in better execution or cost savings or something like that. But it's not really tangible. People always like seeing a cash balance versus like being told to get better execution. So I think there will be more competition between these different sort of layers of the stack to ideally push more of this value back to users, but it also kind of depends on, again, how the stack forms and who's going to vertically integrate and all that kind of stuff. And the last bit here is we need better data. I think like, I have a few sort of like snippets of different snapshots of different parts of the stack in this deck, but we like don't actually have really good visibility into private mempools today and like where orders are actually getting sent before they end up on chain. There's always sort of like very vague, like 70% of orders are going through Infura stack, which is like wrong, but it's a very outdated stack. So if you're interested in exploring some more data around private mempools and private order flow, DM me, email me. I'm working on some research right now. So yeah, that's it.
So recap, when you're talking about UIs having control of the order flow, you were basically saying that happens only by assigning non-transactions for these like specific EIP712s, whatever, encrypted messages, and then that gets passed on to someone else with the UI.
So there's multiple ways to do it. That is one way to do it, right? Is you sign sort of an app-specific order for your thing, and or if it's Sushi or 0x or whatever in OpenSea. Another way to do it, right, is you can just have someone sign a transaction, and you get the hash back, but you don't have the wallet broadcast. So there's like different functions within like Web3 or Ethers for like just signing a transaction. It doesn't work with MetaMask because they don't allow you to do that, but in concept it exists, right, for other Web3 providers.
You do a talk from block native that you're doing wallet origination?
No, that was a block native screenshot, but like that was like 3 months ago, so I haven't seen their latest data. Oh shit! Okay, let's check it out.
Yeah. All right,
cool.
Send you a link. Someone calling Tarun to get him to ask his question.
I think Tarun had to catch his flight. But I'm going to point to someone to ask him a question. Dan.
No pressure.
Yeah, it seems to me like, I mean, there's like, what, like 12 LFAs now, and there's probably going to be like 20 next week, 40 the week after. Like, do you have thoughts on how we could create an auction for order flow auction?
Yeah.
Or is proliferation of like, should we incentivize as many as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I saw like Stefan had the post recently on the different sort of like OFA. I think it was great, right? I think my point is like I don't really doubt that we can design a nice sort of like privacy preserving, value maximizing order flow auction. The question is like, how do we prevent a world where actually MetaMask has like 80% of the retail flow, and they don't actually want to engage in an auction because it's more profitable for them to just extract it themselves or extract it into a permission third party versus actually opening it into an auction. And so I think that is almost more the thing I would like measure and think about maximizing is like the delta between self-extraction or like third party extraction versus like a true like revenue from an auction or something like that.
So what kind of strategies do you getting avoidance to go up small profit for things? Because if MetaMask forgets % of it, if we're going to release transactions, it's very hard to make it useless. I think that's the more value.
Yeah, I think I am kind of bullish on these like more like sort of direct to consumer plays of specifically sort of giving users like a kickback from their MEV, right? Like so far, most of the order flow proceeds either go back to the dApp like the Sushi, or they go back to the wallet of the Rainbow. But like basically no one is actually giving users kickback, or the kickback is becoming like a very abstract way or like price execution. And so I think if it becomes more normalized for users to expect something like that, then it sort of creates competitive pressure in the market. I think if you see that a little bit in like, something say like hotel points or like credit card rewards, right? Where it's like these things shouldn't exist and they're actually like kind of aberrations or inefficient. But the overall idea is basically like to create competitive pressure on providers to like give this sort of perceived consumer surplus. So I think that's kind of an area that might be interesting versus like, again, relying on these providers to like do the right thing.
This might be an oxymoron question, but like, you talk a little bit more about privacy, private mempool, and like, is there any data? Like, where is the data?
Yes. So I published the block native tweet. Basically, the heuristic is, well, if we look at transactions that are confirmed, but we're not seen in any mempool prior to being confirmed, then like probably went through some sort of private relay, right? Like if I send it directly to a miner or send it, whatever. And so the question is like, well, okay, can we keep measuring that on like a regular basis so we can track the size of these private mempools? And then can we do further breakdown within there to see like, okay, what types of transactions are going through private relays and where those are originating from. So I'm looking forward to seeing this data, but I feel like that's actually kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of like pre-MEV Explorer. People are like, oh, MEV is like an issue. How can I actually like map it and like track this? And so this feels very similar to me in that like, it's actually kind of a big growing problem and we need to like make sure we're keeping track of it.
Do you think the kind of abstraction that eventually transaction fees gas fees go to zero, like that if all the transactions go through MetaMask, right? That like, I'll pay the gas fees.
Yeah.
I'll pay the gas fees. Our free wallets, applications, they'll pay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is sort of this idea that like, oh, actually, like the person bidding on your flow is like the ones to be paying the fees. Yeah, I think maybe that sort of goes back to like this creating an expectation of around users of like, you know, getting referrals or getting kickbacks, right? Where it's like that inherently creates competitive pressure on providers to like offer that to them versus like not having that sort of norm, even if it's maybe less efficient than what it should be.
I think there are a lot of actions in DeFi space, or well, pretty much any transaction, right? You have no guarantees on the actual value of your transaction, right? You have an intrinsic value that you prescribe that transaction, but that doesn't mean it can be externalized to the order flow provider.
Right, right.
And so I imagine for things like swaps, that's a very easy value calculation. There are a lot of other things where fundamentally can you'll be paying the full price.
Yes, yeah.
Feels like the dynamic with a lot of these MEV infrastructure projects like workflow auctions is to kind of push the MEV value from the middle to either the user or the validator. So I'd like to understand, what do you think the sustainability for projects like Blockshot, Blocknative, who kind of rely on the searchers kind of P&L share? So like if you kind of competing over 39% for the user or the validator, kind of where does the revenue actually exist for these kind of projects?
Yeah, I think it's like a new trend though, right? Like searcher margins have been compressing kind of forever. Yeah. I think, you know, for these services too, it's not so much about, you know, I don't know, certainly they have searchers of customers, but like you have a lot of other customers too, that's more sassy and diversified in that way. Yeah.
I think all things being equal, people would prefer MEV kickbacks as opposed to better price execution.
I mean, again, I think that like the credit card example is apt, right? Where it's like we're in a really stupid like sort of equilibrium right now with like sort of points. Like this is obviously just like a tax and drag in the system, but it's a very tangible thing people like and feel, and like we shouldn't really discount that. So obviously people like it's better to have, you know, better execution, more efficient, more gas efficient. But like how do you actually feel that and see that, and how do you put a meme around it? And like it's just not as sort of, you know, tangible, I guess. So that's kind of my thinking on it.
It's different by country though, right?
Yes, it's the US specifically is a really weird thing, but it's again, it's like it shouldn't exist, but it does, and like it's kind of the outcome.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no one's gonna use a credit card that doesn't give them points, right? Like what the fuck, you know? It's like
People love that from money just
yeah.
Question. Oh, you go first.
Just like a crazy edge case, like, you know, if the MEV from a user transaction like far exceeds the fee, is it possible there's a world where wallets are kind of like extracting possible transactions from users?
Like have them sign a transaction just so you don't like extract the MEV from it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Transactions
Yeah. I haven't thought about that, but that's interesting. I think I think the gas hawk thing is maybe a little bit in the vein of like gas hawk. Also not industrial, I think it's kind of cool. But basically it's like you are basically capturing the value from your lowered time preference, and like maybe they would be willing to pay you to delay your transaction so they can sort of capture more of that spread. So
what do you think about MetaMask and other wallets basically using to add APIs for signing transactions?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, it's sort of like the sushi thing. It's goofy. I don't really know the reasons why, honestly, because it is. I mean, obviously, it's like a native function in like Web3 and Ethers, and yet like it's just kind of almost intentionally broken. So I don't really know the rationale.
At least for non-Spanish travel, so yeah, that's why they.
But yeah, that doesn't. No, you could fix that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
If there's an open issue, so you can comment on, we could all.
Everyone this.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask the thought leaders in this room. Dan.
Why do you think about this in terms of like MEV kickbacks at all, rather than just we're trying to get users? This is almost all tax volume, right?
Yes.
So why isn't we're just trying to get users the best price?
So I think it goes back to like kind of what I was saying earlier, right? Which is like, it's too abstract and like not tangible a value for people to really appreciate it. People like seeing like money in an account that they can point to, and maybe we can actually present that in terms of like savings in terms of best execution. But like I think relying on my point is like all these different
psychological.
Yes, all different providers here are like acting in their own interests, but really like the user at the end of the day has like sort of market power and pricing power, and so it's like how do you incentivize them to apply that pressure on their given provider?
So we should just like give users like really shitty prices and then like huge kickbacks.
I mean that would be one way to do it, right? Yeah. Or you know,
I mean, what it sort of does. Sort of does.
Hey, it's a private RPC.
I think a different answer to that question also is like, if you look at the swap game, you can think, okay, we can get better prices or rebates, they're sort of interchangeable. But in different kinds of games, the user outcome could be like relatively fixed, right? A very basic example is a Oracle update. Like the execution of the update might just be fixed, and there's no notion of a better outcome with regard to execution, but there's a rebate, and so there's a limit on what you can do with the output, but you can maybe like pay some. And in general, there might be games where the action of one agent increases the welfare of many other agents, and they'll be willing to pay for it, even though the action itself and the potential outcomes of those actions don't actually do that much for the user.
Right. So that's a good example. But I do think like there's probably some like long tail MEV created by user actions, but like they're not submitting new Oracle updates through a wallet or whatever, right?
Yeah, I'm just speaking in general.
Yeah. But like when users are creating MEV, I think the two examples I've heard are like it's DEX trades and like NFT fat fingers.
Yes. But those are also the vast majority, right? Like I don't want to focus on quotation because it's like it's it's a random
right.
data, so.
But that's what there is some non-zero sum. I agree. There's some sort of non-zero sum like MEV creating.
Yeah, and the question is also like, do you think about where the value is today, which is like a lot of swaps, or like, you know, where is it going to be in 10, 15, 20 years? Maybe it's still swaps, maybe it's, you know, something completely different.
Okay, so I'll finish asking my question for the floor leaders. So of the various school of order flow providers, who's going to win? And what are the unknown factors, or what you would like to know?
I think the user's going to win.
Users not counted in service provider, sorry.
No, but I think basically it's going to be so competitive to provide better execution for users that the vast majority is going to end up going. Certainly as DEX MEV, I think it's going to go into better user execution. As it does, like that's what happened in traditional finance, which it seems kind of dystopian when you look at everything, but turns out that just like retail users get like sub-penny spreads.
Why DEX MEV only?
Because that's right now DEX is most MEV. And I think most user-created MEV will probably be also at next second. Just the main category.
What about Tom, thought leader?
Well, I think, again, in the sort of spirit of like moving further up the supply chain and having more leverage, I agree. Users have a lot of leverage, but it's more about maybe helping them like recognize it or actually like use it. Right now, even if you're a user, like you don't have that much agency in terms of like redirecting your order flow. You don't even sort of think about it. So I think that's kind of more what we're thinking about is just like sort of creating competitive markets and dynamics, and instead of just like again finger wagging.
Dad, you're running away before Tina's next question.
Yes. It's hard. Don't wallets start to like run around relays that?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue like if you think about like vertical integration, when MetaMask swaps is actually like a perfect example, right? Where it's like it is the UI and it is the wallet and it is the RPC provider because they have their own like proprietary like private RPC pin, and so it's like how do you like if you get mad at any individual actor there, it's pointless because it's all being critically integrated, and so really the question is like how do you sort of change transaction provenance and like create pressure to like not do this, and that comes from users and market selection.
I was just asking if you think the alpha is like knowing the order flow or executing the order flow. Like
it's in knowing because you have less competition in execution. So like it's kind of the point, right? Is like right now the order flow is public, and that's why you have MEVs, that's why you have searchers. But like in a world where like the order flow is not public, then you sort of have complete discretion, and that's kind of like where the alpha is.